In the dry heart of West Africa, under the blazing sun of Upper Volta, a child was born who would one day ignite a revolution. His name, Thomas Sankara. Born on December 21, 1949, in a small town called Yako, he came into a world divided between the powerful and the powerless, a land still bearing the chains of colonialism. His father, a soldier who once served the French army, carried the discipline of the battlefield, but the quiet pain of submission. His mother, a woman of deep faith and resilience, carried dreams her country was never allowed to dream. From them, Thomas inherited both courage and conscience, a rare combination destined to clash with injustice. As a boy, Sankara was different. While other children played in the dust, he watched, observed, questioned. He wondered why his people lived poor while others ruled rich. He asked why his land, so full of spirit, had to bow to foreign flags. Those questions burned silently inside him, like a spark waiting for wind. He attended local missionary schools, institutions meant to shape obedient minds. But Thomas's mind refused to obey. He absorbed everything: history, geography, philosophy. He read about the heroes of independence, about men who dared to dream: Gandhi, Nkrumah, Che Guevara. Each name added fuel to a fire growing quietly inside him. In classrooms, teachers noticed his calm intensity, a boy who didn't just want to learn the world, but to change it. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. His classmates saw a natural leader, not loud or commanding, but one who inspired simply by being himself. Outside school, the air in Upper Volta was thick with inequality. The French flag still fluttered, the economy still chained. Families like Sankara's lived under the illusion of independence. Thomas saw his parents struggle, the quiet sacrifices, the dignity in poverty, and something inside him began to shift. He realized education alone could not change a system built on oppression. At 17, he faced a choice that would define his destiny: follow a safe path or step into the uncertain world of military life. The army was seen as a ladder, a way out of poverty, a promise of stability. But for Sankara, it was something else. It was a field where discipline met rebellion, where he could learn the structure of power, not to serve it, but to someday challenge it. In 1966, Thomas enrolled in a military academy in Ouagadougou, the capital. There, his mind found both training and turmoil. He studied tactics and strategy, but his heart studied justice. While others memorized orders, he questioned their morality. His intellect stood out. His passion set him apart. During training, he met young men from across the country, future soldiers who would later become either his allies or his enemies. Among them, a few sensed the energy within him, the calm before the storm. Sankara played the guitar during lonely nights, composing melodies that carried sorrow and hope. Music became his escape and his expression. Even in uniform, he remained deeply human. One instructor once said, "Sankara doesn't follow orders blindly. He follows what he believes is right." That belief would one day shake nations. By the time he completed his training, the winds of change were blowing across Africa. Coups, revolutions, uprisings, the continent was finding its voice. He watched closely, absorbing lessons not from textbooks, but from reality. He saw leaders rise and fall, promises made and betrayed, revolutions born and betrayed. But unlike many, Sankara didn't just want power, he wanted purpose. He believed that freedom wasn't a gift to be granted, it was a responsibility to be earned. And though he was still young, his vision was already clear: a self-reliant Africa, dignified and proud. Those who met him in those early years described him as calm, humble, yet fiercely aware. He laughed rarely, but when he did, it came from sincerity. He carried the weight of thought even in silence, as if he could already see the path ahead, full of both glory and betrayal. By the early 1970s, as Sankara's career advanced, the corruption around him became impossible to ignore. He saw officers trading integrity for luxury, leaders serving foreign masters while preaching independence. It disgusted him, not because he hated power, but because he believed in its purpose. Power, he thought, was meant to serve people, not enslave them. That belief isolated him. In the barracks, he was respected, but not always trusted. Some feared his ideas, others admired them quietly. He was a soldier, yet his real war hadn't even begun. Every night he wrote in journals, thoughts, doubts, dreams, fragments of a revolution still unborn. He wrote, "A soldier without political education is a potential criminal." That line would one day echo through Africa's history. As his reputation grew, so did the system's discomfort. The establishment prefers obedience, not awakening. But Thomas Sankara was never meant to obey. He was meant to lead, not through fear, but through faith, not through orders, but through vision. And somewhere deep within, he already knew, to change his country, he would first have to challenge its soul. The young soldier who once questioned orders had now become a man who questioned systems. By the late 1970s, Thomas Sankara had earned a reputation in the military, not for his rank, but for his mind. He was disciplined, brilliant, and dangerously honest. While many officers sought favors from politicians, Sankara sought truth. He began to see that the uniform he wore could either protect his people or become another symbol of their oppression, and he had already decided which side he was on. During his military service, Sankara was sent abroad for training to Madagascar, a country that had just gone through its own socialist revolution. There, he witnessed something extraordinary: people rising, reclaiming their dignity, building a new identity free from colonial control. That experience changed him forever. He studied not just tactics, but ideologies. He read Marx, Lenin, Franz Fanon, men who believed that liberation wasn't only about removing colonizers, but about rebuilding the human spirit. Sankara returned home with fire in his eyes and purpose in his heart. Back in Upper Volta, corruption was rotting the system from within. Leaders lived in luxury, while the people starved. Loans from foreign powers kept the nation dependent, the same way chains had once kept it enslaved. Sankara saw the pattern, a new kind of colonization, one that didn't use guns, but debt. He began speaking out, quietly at first, then boldly. His speeches were short, sharp, and unforgettable. He said, "A soldier without political education is a potential criminal." To him, it wasn't just philosophy, it was a warning. He started small movements within the army, encouraging soldiers to read, to think, to question, to understand that the enemy wasn't always on the other side of the border. Sometimes it was within their own government. By 1981, the political climate in Upper Volta was tense. Coups had become common. Leaders came and went, but poverty remained. Amid the chaos, Sankara was appointed Secretary of State for Information, a position that would test everything he believed in. Within weeks, his integrity clashed with the government's corruption. He refused luxury cars, declined special privileges, and demanded transparency. To him, leadership was not about comfort, it was about sacrifice. When journalists asked about his vision, he said simply, "We must dare to invent the future." The public loved him. The elite began to fear him. His growing popularity made him a target. In 1982, after criticizing the regime's hypocrisy, Sankara was imprisoned, silenced by the very system he served. But they underestimated him, because behind bars, his ideas only grew stronger. People began whispering his name, not as a soldier, but as a symbol. Students, workers, young officers, they all looked to him as proof that honesty still existed in a country drowning in lies. And then, in 1983, history shifted. Another coup erupted, but this one was different. Sankara's allies, inspired by his courage, freed him from prison and placed him at the center of change. At just 33 years old, Thomas Sankara became president of Upper Volta. But he didn't see it as a victory. He saw it as a responsibility, the moment his country had been waiting for, and the test he had been born to face. His first act as president was symbolic, yet revolutionary. He renamed the country. Upper Volta, a name given by colonizers, was buried, and from its ashes, he declared a new nation, Burkina Faso, meaning the land of upright people. For the first time in generations, people felt proud to say where they came from. The flag changed, the anthem changed, but more importantly, the mindset changed. Sankara lived simply. He rode a bicycle to meetings, wore cheap cotton made in Burkina Faso, and sold the government's fleet of Mercedes. He cut his own salary, banned first-class travel for officials, and demanded that every minister plant trees to fight desertification. He said, "We cannot depend on others to feed us. The one who feeds you controls you." Under his leadership, farmers were empowered, women were uplifted, education expanded, and healthcare reached the poorest corners of the nation. Within just a few years, Burkina Faso's economy began to rise. Infant mortality dropped, school attendance doubled, corruption declined. The world began to take notice. They called him Africa's Che Guevara, but Sankara didn't want to be anyone's copy. He wanted to be the first Thomas Sankara. Still, not everyone celebrated his rise. His independence made foreign powers uncomfortable. His defiance challenged the elite, who had grown rich from dependency. And among those closest to him, jealousy began to grow, the kind that doesn't kill quickly, but waits for the right moment. As Sankara built a nation on integrity, betrayal was already building its path toward him. He believed change was worth any risk, but soon he would learn that not everyone dreams of freedom. Some only dream of power, and that dream would cost him everything. Burkina Faso was changing faster than anyone had ever imagined. In less than 4 years, Thomas Sankara had transformed a forgotten colony into a nation of hope. He had challenged foreign powers, defied corruption, and dared to prove that Africa could rise, not by imitation, but by integrity. But revolutions, like flames, burn brightest before they fade. And in the shadows of Sankara's success, fear began to spread. Fear among the rich, fear among politicians, fear among those who had once called him a friend. His message was too pure, too powerful. It left no space for greed. He said, "You cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness." That madness to him was courage. To others, it was a threat. As he pushed harder for equality, enemies multiplied, both inside and outside the country. He refused foreign aid with strings attached, refused luxury, refused to bow. He told the world, "We must produce what we consume and consume what we produce." To the global powers that profited from African dependency, those words were dangerous because Sankara was not asking for help. He was asking for independence. But independence in a world built on control comes at a cost. Inside his government, cracks began to form. Some of his closest allies, men who had once fought beside him, began to feel the pressure. Among them was Blaise Compaoré, Sankara's old friend and trusted comrade. They had shared dreams, shared laughter, and shared a vision for a better Africa. But power changes people, and where Sankara saw unity, others saw opportunity. Foreign interests whispered in the dark. Promises were made, plans were drawn, and by October 1987, betrayal had found its time. On a quiet Thursday afternoon, Thomas Sankara arrived at a meeting in the Council of the Entente. Unarmed, unguarded, confident, he believed he was meeting his cabinet. Instead, he was walking into an ambush. Gunfire erupted. 15 minutes later, silence. When the smoke cleared, Thomas Sankara was dead, killed by the very system he tried to purify. His body was hastily buried in an unmarked grave. His name was erased from official records, his photos banned, his memory outlawed. But you can't bury an idea. In the days that followed, people whispered his name in secret. Children who once waved his flag now spoke his quotes in the dark. And even as Blaise Compaoré took power, promising continuity, the spirit of Sankara refused to die. His death shocked the continent. Across Africa, students marched, workers wept, and artists sang his name. They saw him not as a fallen leader, but as a seed, one that would grow again whenever people demanded justice. Decades later, the truth began to rise from the dust. Documents surfaced, witnesses spoke, and slowly the world began to see what really happened. Not just a coup, but the murder of a vision. Yet even in death, Sankara's words continued to echo. He had once said, "While revolutionaries as individuals can be murdered. You cannot kill ideas. And history proved him right. Today, his image paints walls across Africa, not in gold, but in red, black, and hope. His voice is heard in classrooms, in protests, in the hearts of those who still believe that dignity is not a privilege, but a birthright. He taught the world that integrity is the highest form of rebellion, that a leader's power lies not in his throne, but in his truth, and that freedom, real freedom, begins when a nation dares to stand on its own feet. More than 30 decades after his assassination, Sankara remains immortal, not as a martyr, but as a mirror that shows every leader what true service looks like, and every citizen what true courage costs. Because in the end, Thomas Sankara was never just a man. He was a message that still whispers across the deserts of Africa, through the streets of Ouagadougou, and into the conscience of the world. The revolution can be killed, but the spirit of justice never.